Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream roundtable on this, a Friday, November 28th. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host is the lovely Drea Humphrey from Vancouver, British Columbia. How you doing there, Drea?
I'm doing good. You wouldn't believe how sunny it is today. It's just shining on me. You guys can't see it. So I'm really happy to see that. No snow yet. And as always, I'm happy to be a part of our Rebel Roundup with a panel. That's what happens on Friday. So we have two great guests who you'll be introducing. But before we do that, everybody watching, remember you can be a part of the show too, which I also love. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can join in, you can break news, you can weigh into the crazy stuff we talk about, totally unscripted by leaving a super chat. And if you donate $5 or more to help keep Rebel News alive, we make sure to make that part of the show. And if you're watching on YouTube after the fact and you just want to support us, you can leave us a super thanks. And then my favorite, Rumble, the free speech kings that let us tell you the other side of the story during lockdowns. If you're watching on Rumble, you can do the same thing by leaving us a Rumble rant.
It being November 28th, it is also Black Friday, and I'm not too big a man to say when I'm wrong, which is to say, it was about 15 years ago. I woke up to my alarm early in the morning in the month of November, and there was an advertiser. I can't remember who the retailer was, and they were saying they were promoting Canadian Black Friday, and I literally woke up laughing, saying, "This is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. How can we appropriate an American concept? We have Thanksgiving on a Monday in October, not a Thursday in November." And Drea, I was driving down the 400 from Richmond Hill to Toronto, and I looked over at Vaughan Mills Shopping Mall, and I saw a sight I've never seen. This is a huge mega mall. Every single parking space was occupied, and there were dozens and dozens of cars like the Enterprise in orbit waiting for somebody to leave. It has been an incredible success. It now eclipses Boxing Day, I understand. So there you go. I was completely wrong. I don't know what the point is here. Maybe I'm telling people, just don't take my advice when it comes to business. So there you have it. Well, without further ado, let us get to our panel. And we have political analyst Marc Nixon. How you doing there, Marc?
Ready to be part of the panel today. This is going to be a great discussion.
I hope so, Marc. Thank you so much. And speaking of BC, we have the BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. That would be Carson Binda. How are you doing there, Carson?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
It's always a pleasure to have you and your colleagues come on Rebel. So thank you again for your time. Well, you know, what's consuming the oxygen in this news cycle is, of course, the pipeline deal. Should I put air quotes around deal? Because I'm a little bit skeptical, everyone. Why don't we throw to our first video? It's Premier Eby. Once again, the nattering nabob of negativity, to use a Spiro Agnew quote from the 70s. Let's see what Mr. Eby has to say about this supposed happy days are here again in the energy sector.
The reason why I'm anxious about this proposed pipeline project from Alberta being a distraction is that we've already seen that happen. Nutrien, a large potash producer from Saskatchewan, was involved in conversations with the federal government, with the government of Saskatchewan, about where to export their potash from. A project that would result in significant jobs in British Columbia, would secure the people of Saskatchewan's access to global markets if it stayed in Canada, and would also reduce the risk of Donald Trump putting tariffs on Canadian potash going through the United States. They were making a decision about which port to export through. Unfortunately, instead of having conversations with British Columbia about this project, the Premier of Saskatchewan says he was engaged with Premier Smith about this pipeline project proposal. Because of that, in my opinion, Nutrien made the decision to ship out of Washington State instead of out of British Columbia. Premier Moe and I should have been working together on addressing bottlenecks by encouraging the federal government to invest in new rail infrastructure, the Massey Tunnel, bottlenecks to our ports that Nutrien cited as one of the reasons why they decided to go to Washington State. So my concern about this project being a distraction to real projects and real opportunities for Canadians, unfortunately, I've seen that happen once already.
Well, Marc Nixon, let's start with you. Maybe that is the template moving forward before we get into the nitty gritty of the memorandum of understanding that was signed. Just go to the Americans directly and cut out middlemen like Eby.
Yeah, well, why would anybody invest in British Columbia? Let's be honest. Like, are you serious? So what's interesting is Scott Moe dropped I would call the bomb when he said, you're blocking the pipeline because the boats can't carry the oil, but then you're complaining that you're not getting the potash. I mean, it's so contradictory and it's hilarious. One thing that I find quite interesting is that the projects of national interest, and David Eby's flaunting that BC has the most projects of national interest. I want people to understand why BC has the most projects. It's because Mark Carney doesn't have any faith in Mark Carney whatsoever to deliver on any of the projects that should happen naturally. These are not projects of national interest. He's taking over the projects because he's like, there's no way David Eby and his team, the most incompetent premier in Canadian history, is going to be able to pan out on any of these projects. So we're going to take over as a federal government to actually see these projects through. None of these projects should be on the list. None of them. It's incredible. So that's kind of what's happening in BC.
And Carson, what do you make of Premier Eby's comments?
Yeah, look, I think Nutrien chose not to invest money in British Columbia because Premier David Eby has turned British Columbia into such an uncompetitive jurisdiction to do business. Look, nobody wants to invest in British Columbia right now. No one wants to park their money here when there's so much uncertainty, so much costs, and so much uncertainty imposed by this provincial government. Look, we're seeing it from Nutrien now. They would rather do business in the United States where they're not crushed with a crushing tax burden. Things like the employer health tax that punishes businesses for investing and doing business in BC. And look, we've heard it from the credit ratings as well. BC is not a stable place to do business right now because Eby's high taxes and uncertainty are chasing all of that capital away. This is just the latest example of that bad policy, those bad policies coming home to roost.
And you know, Drea, to Carson's point about the high taxes, the uncertainty, and there's another little devil in the details, this ongoing windstorm, if you will, of Aboriginal land title. Certainly, if I was shopping for real estate in British Columbia, there's no way I'm going to Richmond. That's just off the table. But Drea, since you live in Vancouver, what is motivating Eby's comments and behavior in regard to energy?
Well, I'll talk about what I can say rather than what I think is happening there. But we live under a socialist government. When it comes to red tape, we are like the manufacturers for preventing business. We are absolutely showing, on the public world stage that we are not open for business. And Eby is spearheading that. He is a champion, for everything that isn't sustainable under the guise of it supposedly being sustainable. And you notice when he said that, he threw in the Trump tariffs as well, because that's the emotion that he's capitalized off, more recently on trying to block some of these things from happening. So I think at the end of the day, we're living under a socialist Marxist government. And so one is going to see, business opportunities like this continue to be shut down.
Yeah, unbelievable. And guys, why don't we throw to our next video? It's yesterday's woman, Elizabeth May. She thinks this is unimaginable. Here, check this out.
We knew, we had a lot of advance notice that there would be some kind of memorandum of understanding between the government of Alberta and Premier Daniel Smith and Prime Minister Mark Carney. But this is simply unimaginable. This is a betrayal of so many different values, so many different agreements, so many different orders of rights and existing Canadian law. It completely sets the stage for the complete abandonment of Canada's climate policy. It is simply shocking. So I will go through in short order major concerns and then be available for any questions anyone has. And I think, of course, you're all hearing the responses from British Columbia First Nations, coastal peoples of British Columbia, as well as Canadians from coast to coast. We knew, we had a lot of advance notice that there would be some kind of...
Carson, let's start with you. You know what I find incredible when she says this is a betrayal of so many different values? And I hearken back to, it was about 8 or 9 years ago, Elizabeth May, Miss Green, she was in the Victoria Day parade, I believe it was, and the car she was in, it wasn't a plug-in Prius, it was a Dodge Viper with 640 horsepower. I mean, can we even take this person seriously?
Look, and I think the proof is in the pudding there, right? Look, British Columbia, and on a serious note, British Columbia is the center of a national affordability crisis right now. We know that food banks in this beautiful province are seeing lineups longer than they ever have before. We know from surveys, from polling, that British Columbians are laying awake at night, wondering how they're going to make ends meet, wondering how they're going to pay their bills, make those rent or mortgage payments at the end of the month. For a politician like Elizabeth May to go hold a press conference, do an interview where she says she wants to make it harder for British Columbians to make a good living by stalling important investments, by stalling important capital projects, I just think that's unacceptable. Look, we need our economy to grow. We need those gears to get going so British Columbians can have good, well-paying jobs. We don't need politicians throwing more roadblocks and red tape in the way. And I think that's exactly what Miss May is saying she wants to do.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, Mark? You know, I find I've covered green demonstrations and the hypocrisy is off the charts. You see the attendees coming by car, not public transit or riding a bicycle. You see them making use of the products of the petrochemical industry, like windbreakers when it's cold, and using technology like cell phones, and they don't connect the dots. This isn't because we have solar panels and windmills. It's because of a robust petrochemical industry. So from Elizabeth May on down, why are we even taking these people seriously?
We don't. Let's put it this way. This video wouldn't exist without oil. That's the first thing. The second thing is just 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth May voted in favor to support and prop up the Liberals. So what is she even talking about? How
Great
do you
point.
go from supporting the Liberals and then 2 weeks later saying their values are unacceptable? So you can't have it both ways, Elizabeth May. Either you support them, which you did, and now you're coming out with this. It's complete contradictory. Another thing is, imagine this video of Elizabeth May came out 100 years ago, or maybe even like 60 years ago. The problem with Canada is our woke CBC making it acceptable for these people to come out and say these things. If she said the same thing 60 years ago, public opinion would be like, we need to drive this person out of politics, just out of everything, any decision making. But we've lowered our standard of what's acceptable, because think about it. She wants us to be poor. You know, the less money that we have in our pockets, eventually Canadians are going to be burning trash in order to heat themselves because they can't afford electricity. And that's where we're heading with this. So Elizabeth May is saying that we're going to save the planet. It's actually the contrary. The less money that you have, the less you care about the planet. You will do anything to survive. including destroying the planet. So it's complete backwards with Elizabeth May. We can't take her seriously, but you know how they are. CBC is going to air her front and center every single day so that we lower our expectations in society, and it needs to change. Like, we can't accept this kind of stuff.
No, you're so right, Mark, but I'll put a little addendum there. She wants us to be poor. She's not going to be poor. As they say, socialism isn't for the socialists. But Drea, I don't understand how, A, we're giving this person airtime, B, how this person, and I think here's where your insight comes into play, living in British Columbia, how does she even get elected? And I go back 10 years ago when she was at that Ottawa dinner. I think she might have been inebriated when she was singing an ode to Omar Khadr and our homegrown Al-Qaeda terrorists. You would have think in a normal world, that's a political career killer. Drea Humphrey, how does this woman even get elected in British Columbia?
Welcome to the Gulf Islands of British Columbia. But anytime I need a political pick-me-up, I just watch a clip from that. That is perhaps one of our most embarrassing moments in history. And like I said before, that's a lot when we had Trudeau for a prime minister and all the embarrassing things we did. But it does make you laugh every time you see it. But I don't know if you noticed this last time we talked, last Friday, David, Elizabeth May was kind of very cocky about it. She was like, oh, there's no way this is going to happen. We have something, the tanker bans. And she didn't even really know what she was talking about. BC Ferries goes through that area. And she was saying it was too dangerous to travel through at all times, basically. But she seemed to have a little less steam there. And she claimed she was going to go through a list of reasons why it shouldn't happen. I have a list of reasons why it should. It's just really quick. And I think it's important to say it's from the Business Council of British Columbia. And they just did 5 quick points about why this should happen. Number 1, it removes an overly restrictive and unrealistic emissions cap on the oil and gas sector. Number 2, it sends a strong signal to global investors that Canada is open for business and serious, which we so desperately need, especially in British Columbia. Number 3, it supports trade diversification by strengthening Canada's ability to get resources to non-US markets. Number 4, it reinforces a more pragmatic approach to environmental policy by balancing emissions management with goals with economic realities, which is something we don't like talking about in any way, shape, or form in British Columbia. What is reality? And number 5, it strengthens Canada's economic base, helping create high-paying jobs and generating the revenue needed to fund critical public services. So that right there is so much reason for this to go through. Don't listen to Elizabeth May.
But you know what? I got to tell you, Mark, to Drea's point, when Elizabeth May last week was saying there is no way this is going to happen, my biggest fear is that Elizabeth May, with that comment, might kind of be like a broken clock. It's right twice a day. Even though this memorandum of understanding has been signed, I'm kind of like from Missouri, the show me state. When you show me a groundbreaking ceremony, when you show me shovels in the ground, then I'm going to buy it. Because right now, Mark, I'm having deja vu, and it's a bad kind of deja vu, of the Northern Gateway project going back more than a decade ago, $8 billion project. It was quashed, and it was basically because of the same forces at play that are denouncing this project. Am I being too cynical, Mark, or do you have reservations that there's going to be a there one day?
You know what? I always think differently than others. I look at things in a different lens, so I think people will be interested on my take on this. First, it's not going to happen with the Liberal government. And I think that we all know this, but something did happen. What happened is that they told Canadians, especially the Liberal supporters, and maybe the people in the middle, saying that a pipeline to the North Coast is possible. It's possible. We could all save the environment, and we could also build a pipeline. it is the biggest calculated error I've ever seen from Mark Carney, because now they convince Canadians that it is possible to do both. And it sets the stage for Canadians to have enough of waiting for this possibility and remove Mark Carney, and it will already be things will already be in motion for Pierre Poilievre or whoever is in charge on the conservative side to get it done. Because there's something that people need to understand. If you want conservative policies, you need to vote conservative. They could say whatever they want on the left, but if you like something they're saying, because they're trying to steal things away from Pierre Poilievre right now, things are not going to pan out for the Liberals. They're not going to be able to pan out for anything, but they're trying to take the sail away from Pierre Poilievre. That's what they're doing. But Canadians, they're going to wake up and say, hey, we could actually get this pipeline, and demand it, right? It's like giving somebody a piece of cookie, and then you have the jar behind. Once you get the taste of the cookie, you're going to want the full jar. There's no way you could hold it back. We got a taste of the cookie.
But on the flip side, Carson, are we being played here? And, you know, because I saw clips from yesterday's announcement. The Alberta business community was there. I understand one report said Carney received 15 standing ovations. If you were to tell me a year ago that a Liberal prime minister in Alberta would receive multiple standing ovations, I would bet on the Leafs winning the next 5 Stanley Cups, okay? So what I'm getting at is this kabuki political theater? Is this Carney promising something, but he's going to set up Eby, perhaps Native groups, as the fall guys and say, look, we, the federal Liberals, we wanted this to go through. The heavies are those guys. They won't let us go through with it, even though that's a falsehood. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that Alberta business community that was giving Carney those standing ovations would have maybe thought twice if they'd gone through this MOU and picked up that it includes a big old industrial carbon tax that's going to make life more expensive for Albertans, right? This MOU, and I'm quoting here, quote, will ramp up the carbon tax to a minimum effective price of $130 a ton. I'm quoting Marc Carney now. It means more than 6 times the increased industrial price on carbon. What that means here, folks, is that this MOU lays the groundwork for Canadians to be slapped with a carbon tax. And folks, it doesn't matter if it's a front-end carbon tax that you pay at the pump or a back-end carbon tax that's slapped on things like refineries and fertilizer plants. Because if you slap a carbon tax on a refinery, well, those costs are passed down to consumers every time they fill up the family minivan. If you hike industrial carbon taxes on fertilizer plants, well, those costs are passed down every time you buy groceries or a farmer goes to plant their crop. Yep. So this is sort of the worst of both worlds. A hidden carbon tax creates higher prices and fewer Canadian jobs, hitting at that competitivity piece we were talking about earlier. So this should be a really big red flag for Canadians.
You know, I don't think we focus enough on the industrial carbon tax, Drea. And further to what Carson said, I'll believe a pipeline is going through if there is some evidence that somehow, some way, Brookfield is behind it, because I believe a Brookfield company is behind the Colonial Pipeline in the United States. We know Marc Carney, by what he said in the past, is anti-pipeline. If you look at his book, Values, we know he's anti-pipeline. Suddenly he's had a come-to-Jesus moment and he wants pipelines. Drea, am I being too pessimistic, too cynical, or do you believe this is actually going to come to fruition in your province?
No, I don't. If I had to flip a coin or take a bet, and I'm not really a good betting woman, but I would say no. I think that Premier Danielle Smith, did everything she could. She's doing what she felt was best. Whether or not she believes it herself, I don't know. And we saw what happened right after in the statement that Prime Minister Carney put out. He said that this basically cannot happen without British Columbia and without consultation with Indigenous groups. And we already see the force coming from certain First Nation chiefs and the mainstream media pushing it. One quote is from, and I'm sorry if I say this wrong, the Heiltsuk Nation chief, Marilyn Slett, says, we will use every tool in our toolbox to ensure that this pipeline does not go ahead. And they got a lot of toolboxes. I mean, private property's up for grabs. It's a real thing going on here. So you see that kind of thing. So is Mark Carney just saying, hey, look, I'm showing you guys I'm doing a deal, and Premier Daniel Smith saying, hey, I'm trying to do this deal. But at the end of the day, like you said, David, they're just going to be like, oh, well, BC is being extreme as usual, so we tried.
And you know something, Drea? Much like my opinion of the future of Canadian Black Friday, I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see this pipeline go through, but until I see it, I can't believe it. Very quickly, guys, because we're running out of racetrack, why don't we go around the horn? Mark, to Drea's point with certain Native groups, and by the way, never confuse the mouthpieces at Native groups as the opinion on the reserve of Natives, many of whom would be enriched with a pipeline project, and they are pro-energy project. But, one of the caveats is we don't want to see tankers going into our pristine waters because of the potential environmental damage. But as I understand it, Mark, that's just another Friday in BC with American tankers going up and down from Alaska. So how can this be a valid excuse to dump on a pipeline project?
It's not. It's not. You know what I did? I did something really interesting. We're in the age of AI. So what I did is I put in all of the scenarios since this announcement, and I said, what is the likelihood? And I went to multiple AIs, the back and forth, and it said the likelihood of a pipeline being approved 20 to 30% based on historical First Nations and everything. So there is a 20 to 30% based on multiple AIs that we're actually going to get a pipeline from this. Isn't that incredible?
That is amazing. And Carson, it's not only the Green people, the Native activists, the David Ebys of the world, but by my recollection, I think Northern Gateway, the final nail in the coffin was from the appeals court saying it could not get through. That's what I'm worried about too. Another specter in all this, activist judges that are drinking the green Kool-Aid. What say you, my friend?
Yeah, well, look, I think a lack of clarity is really costly for everyone. And with a number of court decisions, the courts have created a whole lot of uncertainty, not just for British Columbians, but for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. So I think when it comes to hammering down these really delicate pipeline negotiations, figuring out what kinds of major products or projects go ahead, taxpayers need a seat at that table. We can't trust the activist judges and the government lawyers to hash this out in a way that works for taxpayers. We need a seat at the table. We need to make sure that taxpayer voices are being listened to, no matter what happens with this proposal. But I'd also like to add, we need to make sure that it's private money, not taxpayer dollars, that end up building this pipeline. Our federal government is drowning in debt, and we can't afford to hike taxes on Canadians or borrow money to build a pipeline if the private sector is able and willing to do it, which, if there truly is a business case, the private sector should be. So that's a few really key things everyone should keep in mind with this pipeline discussion.
Yeah, and there's the private sector, and then there's the Mark Carney private sector, Drea, which I believe is what's good for Brookfield is good for Canada and good for Mark Carney's blind trust. I think that would be the only way this gets through. But in the realm of political theater, yesterday, and the last word will go to you, Dre, on this file, Stephen Guilbeault, the former environment minister, who he huffed and he puffed and he put in his letter of resignation. I think this is more kabuki theater. It's been rumored for many weeks that he's got a diplomatic post, and my condolences to any nation that gets Mr. Guilbeault. And by the way, I hope he doesn't take out his anger by climbing up the CN Tower again. But Drea, what do you think? Is this just more, is this a masterclass in political theater of, Carney setting the table that I'm trying to do the right thing for Alberta, but there's too many forces against me?
Yes, I think so. Like you said, we heard about this happening before it's happening. So, I mean, that's the biggest red flag. We saw it with Krista Freeland, her new career, saying, congratulations, you're coming here. And then, she didn't even address it. The Prime Minister's office knew nothing about it. So in some ways, I guess everyday Canadians waiting for the news to drop might be the last to know, but this is just theater.
Wow.
And it seems like it's a shuffling of getting rid of the people, the ministers in particular, that Canadians despise, in the Liberals as well.
Dre, I really wish you hadn't mentioned Fraulein Freeland, to use a Stompin' Tom Commerce line. My back still hurts when I hear that word. But anyways, guys, we got to wrap it here. But before we go, we'll start with you, Marc. Where can our viewers find you?
Oh, you can find me. Apologize. You can find me on YouTube, Marc Nixon Official. You'll find me on X, Marc Nixon 24 on X, and you could also find me on TikTok and Instagram. Just search me, Marc with a C, Nixon. And if you want the truth, you come to me, and I'm bringing the truth every single day. So come and join me.
Well, fantastic. And I got to tell you, I don't know where you're broadcasting from, but that looks like a Hollywood set. I've never seen such a beautiful, palatial, clean house, at least not on the Rebel Live Roundup. But thank you so much, Marc. And Carson, where can we find the great work of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to keep up with not just me, but also my fantastic colleagues, Franco Terrazzano, Chris Sims, is by heading on over to taxpayer.com. That's taxpayer.com. You can also connect with me directly on X at Binda Carson.
Carson, Marc, thank you so much for the first half hour. Greatly appreciate it. And folks, keep it tuned to this station. We have to take an ad break, and we'll see you on the other side.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of...
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us. Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
You like the hat? Me too. Same strong message about making Canada great again, but in a really cool color, black and gold. There's other colors available, and it's an all-Canadian site. So if you want to signal your tribe or trigger a Liberal, go to mcgahats.ca today.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.
Big news! Rebel News now has premium memberships on X, Locals, and right here on YouTube. For just $4.99 a month on YouTube, you'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and access to members-only chats during our live streams. At $8.99 a month, you'll also unlock Rebel News Plus shows and our documentaries. But here's the catch. YouTube could cancel that premium tier at any time. That's why the best way to support us is at rebelnewsplus.com. It's just $8 a month, cheaper if you go annual, and you'll get exclusive extras like an ad-free site, comments access, and even the chance to submit op-eds. Wherever you join us, thanks for keeping our independent journalism alive and strong.
Do you agree with me? It is time to make Canada great again, and that is why we at Rebel News have teamed up with MCGA hats to introduce, well, the fashion sensation of 2025. Oh, and by the way, these beautiful hats, they are made in Canada. We don't rely on cheap imports coming over from China. So what are you waiting for, folks? Show your pride. This is the perfect thing for a patriot to wear, or maybe there's a patriot in your life that you would like to gift such a hat. Please go to mcgahats.ca. That's mcgahats.ca. Don't be shy about it. Wear this cap. Let everybody know you want to make Canada great again.
Well, folks, talk about perverse irony. It's Black Friday, and at least in Vancouver, British Columbia, it's a blackout. I have lost the services of my beloved co-host, Drea Humphrey. And isn't that also another added element of irony? We just spent the last half hour talking about the importance of developing the energy sector. And suddenly it would seem that on a nice sunny day, on a Friday before rush hour, that there's not enough energy to keep the lights on in British Columbia. I wonder what David Eby has to say about that. I'll just double check that. Do we have Drea again, or? It's the Christmas miracle. Drea is back on. Can you believe it? There was a blackout. What's any reason for that blackout?
I don't know. And I told you at the beginning of the show, it's a beautiful day. It's certainly not weather related, but we definitely have no power at all, which means I don't have the glorious lighting behind me that, helps my skin look really good.
So you don't have any artificial lights. That's the sunlight illuminating you.
This is the real me, everybody, in the flesh.
No, it looks
in
great.
The dark. In the dark.
So like I said, Dre, I mean, it just seems so perversely ironic. We spent the last half hour speaking about energy, and then thanks to some sort of problem in the energy grid, you are in a blackout. And by the way, we should, one of our guests, of course, was Carson Binda of the Taxpayers Federation. And here's a pop quiz for our audience. I'm not going to say the total, but Premier Eby billed taxpayers for 3 wood leather soccer balls. Don't show the X, guys. Write down 3 wood leather soccer balls. How much, in your wildest imagination, remember, wood leather, not platinum, not gold, not diamonds. How much do you think those 3 soccer balls cost? I'll give you 5 seconds as I drone on to write down a figure, because I think even the most imaginative viewer isn't going to get it. Well, here it is, folks, in case you haven't already heard. $193,000. That is $63,000 per ball. Then he hopped on a plane and flew to Japan for a photo op with their soccer balls. Drea, you know what? I still to this day, I mourn the late, great mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford. I think he had the greatest political slogan of the 21st century, which was 3 words: respect for taxpayers. In this kind of economy, with people losing jobs, with the cost of living the way it is, with the homeless crisis, with food bank usage quintupling, how dare your premier pull a stunt like that? Now, people will say, in the big picture, what's 190,000? That's not the point. It all adds up. And certainly from the PR optics, they are brutal.
It was so shocking when I saw Carson's video about that. Like, how do you explain that away? It's impossible to explain away for soccer balls of all things. And you're right. We are struggling in British Columbia. I mean, I know a lot of Canadians are, but it's always been a very expensive place. And now everybody is strapped to the core. And then you have this. You have David Eby doing that and with a smile. It makes it all the more worse.
It's incredible. And why is he bringing them to Japan? I mean, Canada is hosting World Cup of Soccer games next year. So I don't get it. What's the connection?
At the very least, let's at least use it here. It's just the strangest thing. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain what's going on here.
You know, Drea, I'm sorry to say this because
don't judge me by my premier.
No, and certainly I've been to British Columbia. It really is beautiful, as the slogan goes. But I'm telling you, it's a write-off for me to ever consider moving to. And I think here's the final nail in the coffin. Masha Kleiner of the BC Teachers Federation says the Federation will not celebrate Canada Day. Instead, it will be celebrating, quote, Land Back Day on July 1st. You know what? We might chuckle about this, but this is a problem, a systemic problem in education right now in many Western countries where we're being taught to despise our country, to hate our history. And you know, Drea, how tone deaf can you be? I alluded in the first half hour that right now, I think your province has a crisis on its hands with questions about private property ownership. And you see a taxpayer-funded entity like the BC Teachers Federation going along with this. You know, I wonder if Miss Kleiner, I wonder if she has a home that she is going to surrender to a Native group, like,
Exactly.
don't tell me, show me, right?
No, you know what? We are in an absolute crisis. This has to stop. Everybody is watching British Columbia, not just across the country. Now it's starting to get international, where people are going, what the heck is going on there under what I call reconciliation overreach? And so you see what our kids are being taught. It's such a lie. Some of my family was invited here. This was the land of the free, something to celebrate, where you could escape slavery and come and live, and then get your own land back east. We were actually given land, and then we were able to make businesses and things like that. I mean, that is Canada. And in British Columbia, we do have only two very strong voices calling this out. They're both from the One BC party, led by Dallas Brody, and the House Speaker of that group is MLA Tara Armstrong, and she recently said, Canada was not stolen, it was built. And, we can talk about bad things that happen in history, absolutely, but that doesn't blanket all of the great things that made Canada this place where people from all across the world have been wanting to come here in droves. Now they're coming here and finding out it's not quite what they thought anymore. But we need to hold on to that. We need to make sure our kids, our grandkids are knowing the truth about Canada. And when you talk about the private property rights, it's getting real. It's beyond real. I've been warning the public about how British Columbia adopted the UN's aspirational framework for Indigenous rights, not the UN's framework for human rights, which would have been for all of us, but just Indigenous rights, which overreach everything, including land rights. So to the point that we made that aspirational framework law binding here in 2019. The UNDRIP has become what we abbreviate as DRIPA. And that is how you're seeing the crazy ruling like the Cowichan tribes versus Canada. And now we learned that all of Kamloops is up for grab, all the private property there and some more in surrounding areas. This is not a joke. So when you see unions and whatever saying things like this, you need to immediately call it out. If you're a member, if you see your principal doing it, it needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. And of course, if your MLA is doing it like the NDP, you need to reach out to them as well. And we have a website called, I should say, we have a website where you can sign our petition. I'm going to hand deliver that to some of the leaders. In particular, it's the NDP out here at endlandgrabs.com.
Well, Drea, I think this issue is ultimately headed to the courts, up to and including the Supreme Court of Canada. And unless they put the kibosh on this insanity, truth and reconciliation, I've said this to you before, I mean, it's all about going forward. Did we have a perfect history with Natives in this nation? No, of course we didn't. And of course there were slights and wrongdoings. But truth and reconciliation is about getting together, moving forward, setting a new template, sharing the wealth all around. If this becomes a fact of life in BC, and this virus, I have no doubt, is going to spread to other provinces in Canada, and as I understand it, there's even a U.S. Native tribe that is putting a claim on some land in British Columbia. If this is allowed to happen, Drea, that people who have spent 30, 35, 40 years of their lives busting their asses, paying down a mortgage, only to have a sheriff show up with a piece of paper and saying, sorry, that house is not yours, that will set truth and reconciliation back more than 150 years. I could see little mini Wacos breaking out with the rage that this would encounter. Hey, maybe that's the reason for the fetish for the gun grab that the Liberals have to prevent that. What say you?
Absolutely. The decision has already taken us back in reconciliation. There's no question about that. And you talk about it going through the courts. It's already in appeal, not with the Supreme Court yet. But then the property owners are waking up to the fact that, hey, our government didn't even stand up for us in the first place. They didn't argue the most strongest argument for this situation, which was extinguishment of Aboriginal title. Richmond said, hey, we need to argue this. But for some reason, Canada and Eby himself, because he was the Attorney General at the time, they did not allow their lawyers to argue that. We are also seeing more recently, just in the last couple of days, I think it was officially filed on the 21st, that there is a proposed class action about to happen. It's been filed, the proposal for it. It needs to be certified. And that's being taken on by two different landowners in Richmond. One is a man who owns a business out in Burnaby, but both of them own land. And they are basically making the allegations, of course, with a lot of credibility, that they were sold property under false pretenses, where the government, and they paid taxes under such, because the government knew all along that there was this dispute going on and they were not informed. And they also bring up in that case as well, in that proposed legislation class action, they also bring up the fact that they were not properly, their property rights were not properly defended by the province that they're supposed to, the province and the federal government that they're supposed to count on for this appeals. So it's looking very grim, to be honest, on what it meant when the BC Supreme Court said your fee simple title, which is supposed to be secure, is now defective and invalid, and Aboriginal title supersedes it.
Unbelievable. And Drea, tell me, if you owned property in, say, Kamloops or Richmond, BC, is it even sellable right now with all the uncertainty?
Who's going to buy it, and how low of a price are you going to sell it for? This is the everyday thoughts that these home landowners are having, not to mention, am I going to be able to renew my mortgage? We're already seeing many of them saying that that's going to be an issue. Who's going to lend them money to renew their mortgage? Nobody knows exactly what this means. At the end of the day, is it just going to be a money grab for these First Nations? Remember that 100% of British Columbia is being disputed over one way or another from over 200 bands who don't even agree with each other on whose land is whose. So when does this end?
And you know what? We're certainly not getting any leadership from the federal Liberals. Look at this news item, Drea. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand reproaches Senate Foreign Affairs Committee for not beginning Thursday's hearing with a land acknowledgement. Drea, this is throwing gasoline onto a raging fire.
It is so out of touch, but that is good news. It's good news that the land acknowledgement did not happen. That's what we're seeing there. And I am hearing that, from teachers who are afraid to speak up, but they're sending me messages saying, just so you know, they didn't do the land acknowledgement. There is a shift happening. People didn't like those compelled land acknowledgements to begin with. And now we're seeing they have good reason not to. But then again, in British Columbia, what did we see? The One BC party put forth a proposal to stop compelled land acknowledgements from public servants. And that was shut down not just by the NDP, which is no surprise, but actually by the BC Conservatives, John Rusted included. Only two of the BC Conservatives said, hey, we'd like to hear this proposed legislation pass first reading. First reading almost always happens. It doesn't mean that you're on board with it. It just means you're going to hear it out. Even the BC Conservatives, except for Abbotsford, Langley's, Harmon, Bangu, and Chilliwack, I want to say Chilliwack North, Heather Moth. Those were the only two out of the BC Conservatives to say enough is enough. We don't have the right, the public servants don't have the right to speak on behalf of these property owners and say that the land is unceded.
And Drea, to personalize this, going from Richmond to Richmond Hill, Ontario, where I live, I can tell you about 10 or 12 years ago when Richmond Hill City Council skewed right of center, they took away the land acknowledgement. And it wasn't because they're anti-native. The points being made is, wait a minute, these are hollow words. We acknowledge we're on former native territories. What about doing something tangible like bringing clean drinking water to those reserves? And there's several dozen that are still under boil advisory. Well, I can tell you, the pendulum swings. It's now a left of center council, and I believe they brought the land acknowledgement back. So I would like to see more councils, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, to grow a spine and stand up to this nonsense, because you are making the case, I think, for Native litigants to claim this land back.
Well, that's a fact. We now know that the city of Richmond has known about this case and for some reason didn't tell its own citizens. But back in
That's outrageous.
Yeah, back in 2021, the Musqueam Nation, who, by the way, was claiming, was disputing for some of the land too, I believe, in the Steveston area, was pressuring. They said, in light of the unmarked grave claims that were made in 2021 from the Kamloops Band, which of course most of our viewers now know are false. There have been no bodies discovered there. But at the time they said, well, in light of this discovery, why isn't Richmond doing land acknowledgements? And Mayor Malcolm Brody here came out, or Brody Malcolm came out and said, we can't do, now citizens didn't know what he meant, but he said, we can't do land acknowledgements because of a legal matter in the court. So that's why when I saw him, I said, you even publicly addressed this in 2021. Why didn't you explain that to your citizens? We also see that around the same time, Port Coquitlam's mayor, which there's Aboriginal title over a big chunk of land there, not private property from what I can see, but still, affecting parks and other things that the public use. That mayor, Brad West, also previously said that we can't do land acknowledgements for legal matters too. So it has real legal implications.
Yeah, but I'm very upset at the lack of transparency. And you can't hide behind there's something before the courts. Every resident in Richmond has skin in the game, literally. And for you to keep those people in the dark, that is so egregious, Drea. It is off the charts for me.
It's been almost 10 years, a decade that case has been going on. And that case with Kamloops involves the same band that made the false unmarked grave claim discoveries and the other band close to it. And that the narrative behind why they made that claim over all of Kamloops and the Sun Peaks resort area, such prime real estate, is they said that they needed to stop a mining project that was being proposed. Now, here's the craziest part about it. That mining project was shut down in part due to Aboriginal consultation, maybe 7 years ago, something like that. I can't remember the exact year. But the case is still going. Why hasn't the case been claimed as moot? It's still before the courts. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. Drea, I see we're past 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So, boy, time flies when you're having fun. I hope it was fun for you. But before we sign off, I think we might have a few super chats. Oh, we have one? Oh, have we lost Drea again? There you go. Okay. Oh, it's Annalisa here. I finally get to watch a live. Of course, I have to tell my sweet Menzies, let me say that again, my sweet Menzies, that I have missed you. Also, you look very adorable. Let me say that again. You look very adorable. Love you both. Annalisa, you are just so wonderful, Annalisa. Thank you so much. And thank you for that very generous donation as well. And I believe that's the only one. And, well, what can I say, folks? Who cares about energy, right? We just lost Drea again due to some other kind of blackout issue in beautiful BC. But that's just me. Listen, I will be back on Monday with the sensational Sheila Gunn-Reid. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Annalisa for that wonderful donation. And as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Big news, Rebel News now has premium memberships on X, Locals, and right here on YouTube. For just $4.99 a month on YouTube, you'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and access to members-only chats during our live streams. At $8.99 a month, you'll also unlock Rebel News Plus shows and our documentaries. But here's the catch. YouTube could cancel that premium tier at any time. That's why the best way to support us is at rebelnewsplus.com. It's just $8 a month, cheaper if you go annual, and you'll get exclusive extras like an ad-free site, comments access, and even the chance to submit op-eds. wherever you join us. Thanks for keeping our independent journalism